AI system with the AI company who will be going around and they're going to explain everything that's going to happen during this process, making sure you understand. We want to make sure we're over communicating. If you have any questions, once we get finished with the presentation, we'll have questions and answers. Also, we want to make sure that you feel free to ask any questions, please. And after today, if you need more information, please reach out, making sure you are aware of what's going on. With that being said, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Frank, and he'll go deeper into the conversation.
Good. Frank D'Alessio. Any questions you have, we'd appreciate it if you could wait until the end of the presentation. There's a lot of information that's going to be heard tonight. If it's not solved tonight, you can give our office a call in the tax assessor's office. So with that said, we're going to turn it over to Greg here from Appraisal Systems.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. Okay, so we're going to be going through this PowerPoint presentation. Let me get my distance for the mic right here. And like Frank said, I'll be going over a lot of information. Often the questions do get answered as we go through, but at the end, if it's not answered completely, or if you have questions, not at the end with the questions, you can also, like Frank said, contact his office. You can contact our office as well, and I'll give you all that information at the end so that we can, just do all of that at one shot. Okay, so to start, NORC is doing a revaluation. So what that means by the Handbook for New Jersey Assessors, it seeks to spread the tax burden equitably within the taxing district by appraising property according to its true value, assessing it based on such value. This is accomplished by a mass appraisal of all real property in the taxing district and by an outside professional appraisal or revaluation firm. What that means is we're going to put a current market value on all the properties in the town. That's the short answer. That is then used as part of the calculation for the property taxes. Many people assume that this process adds revenue to the city. The only way the city or any municipality can get revenue is by passing a budget. What this process does is it makes sure that your part of what you have to contribute to that budget is spread out evenly based on your value relative to everyone else's value. That's basically what that says in a simpler term, but that's what that means. Okay, so why a revaluation? In this case, it's ordered by the County Board of Taxation. The criterion that was used is, first thing is, it needs to be done on a regular basis. The regular basis isn't defined by a specific number of years, but that's the beginning. Usually people assume it's about 10 years. It doesn't have to be that. The last time this was done was in 2013. The main things they're looking at is what's called an average ratio and the coefficient of deviation. Those are the numbers that they look at from the assessed value to what properties are selling for, and the variation from that, where it's not showing what it did before is the easiest way to put it. That it's no longer, these are showing, the further this gets away from being 100% the ratio, either above or below, it is showing that there's not an equitable distribution of the tax burden. And the coefficient of deviation is showing those sales that they can be off. In this case, we're just about 55% off from 100%. And then there's a deviation that similar properties are selling 28%, 28 points above and 28 points below. So there's great variation on the sales are way off from where they should be, and there's great variation on those sales that are occurring of similar properties. Another thing that affects the city is the number of appeals. So every tax year, you as property owners can appeal your property taxes. Well, not the taxes, but you can appeal the valuation. When there are a lot, it puts a financial burden on the city, and it's also an indication that the values may not be accurate any longer. So if there are a lot of appeals, that also is an indicator. And then just things that happen in life. There's changes in the characteristic of different parts of the city. That happens constantly, even within the ward. There are things that change. There can be changes you know, a warehouse goes in, a new large apartment complex goes in. There could be a larger thing of a recession or inflation can affect values. There could be fads which indicate that one part of the city or one part within a ward becomes more in demand and people are willing to pay more for that. And then legislation, things or just naturally occurring things that are reflected in legislation, flood zones change, reclassification of lands, reclassification of zonings. So things like that all affect that. Okay, so what happens, this sort of speaks to some people's concerns about, the big question is always, how will this affect me? So we're going to give you a couple examples here of property values before, proposed values after, and how that process works. So in this process, when we're talking about these numbers, we need to talk about them with the assumption that the budget stays the same. We all know that the budget does not always stay the same, but to understand these numbers, we have to have a constant, and the constant is going to be the budget, okay? So if a house was assessed at $185,000, and the current tax rate, I think it's a little bit different, but when we put this presentation together, the current tax rate was $55.84 per thousand. So the taxes on this property would have been $10,330. So in this process, if the values all doubled, right, just on average, everybody doubled, the value of the property would then be at $370,000. The tax rate gets a inflationary adjustment because the total value of the city times the tax rate has to equal the budget. If the budget stays the same and the values go up, the tax rate has to come down proportionally. So it would come down by half. So it comes down to $27.92 as an estimated tax rate. So then, again, the calculation would come out exactly the same. Again, assuming the budget doesn't change. Now, if your assessment was greater than that average of doubling, say the value came out at $400,000, the tax rate would still be at that 27.92, and the taxes would be a bit higher. If your assessment came below that average of doubling, and you came in and say at 340,000, do the math, you would come in a little bit lower. On average, in this process, all things being equal, like I said, about a third of the people have their normal year-to-year increase. About a third have a greater than normal increase. About a third will have a smaller than normal increase, because it all has to balance out. For every property owner that pays $1 more, someone else is paying $1 less, okay? And just a similar example, if the values went up by 3.4% or 340%, it does the math the same thing, the same numbers reveal themselves. You can look at the math. This is posted online. If you're a math person, you want to see it. But basically the same thing is if you are at the average increase in value, you would have the same taxes assuming the budget stayed the same. If the budget does go up, more in taxes. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right, is this better? Can you hear better now? Okay. All right, so for this, there's a 7-part process. The process begins. Thank you. So you guys, back in end of November, we sent out the letter to everybody in the city saying we were going to start the process. Earlier this year, we started. We began in the South Ward, moved to the East Ward, moved to the Central Ward. We're now doing the North Ward, and then we'll go into the West Ward. So we're just kind of moving our way across the city in somewhat of a logical order, just south to north and then to the west. So this is to give you information, let you know that we're starting, and these letters and the brochures are posted on our website. Okay, so when we start in an area, well, when we start in any town, we're doing it sort of treating each ward as its own kind of town within the city. So we will, on our website, we have an ongoing list of the properties that have been assigned. So once your property has been assigned, you can go and see who your inspector is, and it'll have a name and their ID number, and they will have an ID on, and it'll have their picture and their ID number. And you can also look on our website, it will have that ID sheet to show you what the person looks like. So you have that comfort level, person is at your house we're there for our reason. Okay, so we do our, what we call our first knocks between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And it is, the first visit's unannounced. So we knock, and if you're there, you know, we let you know who we are and that what we're there for. And we'd like to get the exterior inspection of the house done and the interior. That's the ideal. And if that doesn't work the day we're there, there are options, and we'll discuss those as we go forward. If someone comes up without our ID or doesn't match the person that's on the list online, don't let them in. And you should be calling Frank's office, our office, and if you feel threatened, call the police, because they may not be us. Okay, Alex. Okay, as we're coming for our first visit, we're also not just looking at your property, but we're looking at the area. Is there evidence of flooding in the area? Is there evidence of economic growth that's going to affect the traffic? All sorts of things that we're looking for to see in a bigger sense how that area is affected and how those influences would affect your value. Okay, at the first, when we're actually knocking, we will ring the bell, knock the door, and when you answer, we tell you who we are. If you want to see our ID closer, we'll show you. And what we do is we want to measure the entire exterior of the house, and we'll be taking notes on the overall condition, a couple things about the house, you know, what kind of siding, things like that. We also, like I said, would like to do an interior inspection, and we'll get that to that in a minute. What we're doing is we're basically making a two-dimensional sketch of the house. The labels give us the third dimension. So on the right bottom there, it says 1.5 S over B. That's 1.5 stories over basement. If you had 2 stories over basement, 3 stories over concrete slab, however, it just gives us that third dimension so we know what your house looks like and how many square feet there are. We're noting what kind of house it is. Is it a colonial, bi-level, split level, ranch, whatever, condo, townhouse? Okay. And we're looking at the condition of the house. When we look at condition, it's, we're looking at the age of the house, right? So if a house is a 1950s house and it looks like a 1950s house and it's fine, it's in average condition. It's typical for the age of the house is how we define average. If somebody has a brand new house and it's amazing, it's also average. It's typical for the age of the house. The difference in value comes in the depreciation for age. So an older house would get depreciated down, where a newer house, even though it's average, it will not lose any of the value because it has no age. So that's one of those things that people will, if they see like one neighbor, they're marked average and we're marked average, and the house is new versus old, it's average for the age of the house. Okay. Okay, when we come, and if you are not home, we will leave you a note saying that we were there, and it will let you know that you can call for an inspection. You could schedule an appointment. Because a lot of people, myself, I'm working on like 10 hours of work right now today with this meeting, so we're not always home. But when you see the note, you call up, and we have inspectors available, and we're trying to be as flexible. We have one inspector that works Monday through Friday all day long doing nothing but inspections. So any time of the day, he works to do that. And then our regular inspectors in town have appointment times as well, so that we can try to accommodate everyone as possible. Go ahead, next. Okay, the interior inspection. It is a very quick process. We're trying to be as least intrusive as possible, and it is just a room count and a general condition. We're going to walk through, say, all right, second floor, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. First floor, living room, dining room, kitchen, half bath. Basement, partially finished with den. You know, it's meant to be that quick. We're picking up a couple things, but on average size house, 5 to 10 minutes. If it's a little bit bigger, maybe 15. But it's meant to be very quick, meant to be very intrusive. We don't have to go looking through closets. We're not code officers. We're just there to get the basic facts to get a correct value on your property. When we're inside, we're also looking at the quality of kitchens and bathrooms. So if you put your house up for sale, you would, if you had a brand new kitchen, you would put that in your listing. You'd expect to get more for your house because you improved the kitchen. We're looking at the same things. So we're looking to see, have you done a recent improvement to the kitchens or baths? And if so, we mark it accordingly. And if your kitchen has fallen into disrepair where it's older and it needs to be fixed, we're going to take that into consideration. That would affect your value lower. Okay. And same thing for bathrooms. We're marking them either modern for recently renovated. And when we say renovated, we mean a full pull out, gut, and replace. Not you fix the toilet or you put new cabinets in the kitchen. Everything out and brand new in. Okay. Attics and basements, we're looking to see if they're finished. And we are looking to see the definition of finished. We're looking for floors, walls, and ceilings. So if 2 of the 3, they're considered finished. And so you can have half the basement finished, half not, and it's just it does add some value. It's not considered living space for the basement. It's considered finished basement. It's like an enhanced recreational space. So it has additional value beyond being a basement. Okay, next. With an interior inspection, if you have a concern for your health or somebody that's living there, or you just don't like people in your house, we do offer virtual inspections of the interior through FaceTime or Zoom. And we can, in a lot of ways, that's more convenient because we can set times off regular hours. I did one the other night, 8 o'clock. We don't like doing them that late, but I'm still working, so when needed, we try to accommodate people as much as we can on off hours as well. And that just makes it easy because it's only a few minutes. We don't have to drive specifically down here at 8 o'clock to just do one inspection. So those kind of things allow for a lot more flexibility. Part of the inspections are for townhouses and condos. With townhouses and condos, we don't have to measure the property because they come directly off the master deed. A condo or townhouse, you can't make any changes to it. So we get the information from the master deed that's set, but we are looking at the exterior to note the condition of the overall building, and we will do an interior inspection to see, because you, in a condo or a townhouse, you still can do improvements to the kitchen, to the bathroom, and townhouses, if you have a basement, you could finish that. So we treat them all the same as well. And this is just kind of what master deeds look like when you get the documents. If any of you have condos or townhouses, that's what you see. Okay, so so all of that was the first step. That's all of us doing inspections in the field. While we're doing that in the office, we're working at dividing the city into smaller and smaller neighborhoods. Even within the wards, we're looking at things that affect some areas more than others. You know, in this part of the city, the houses that are closer to 21, they're going to be looked at differently than houses that are in this area. So it's similar things that affect it. If you're close to a rail line, you're close to a highway, you're close to other things that would affect what you could sell your house for. And this is from the previous time we did this. So you can see all the different color changes in there, and it can get very specific. So, and at the end of the process, when we do send the proposed value letters, this neighborhood map is posted on our website as well, so you can see, and this is what we use to narrow down the properties that we use to compare the sales of what did sell to determine your value. Okay, at the same time as step 2, we're doing step 3, which is gathering the sales information. We have to base your value on the sales that have occurred. So whatever the market is telling us, that's how we value. We don't say, oh, the market's up, so we're going to go up. If the market is up, we go by the market and we look at the sales of similar properties in your neighborhood to determine the value of your property. And if there's a house that's sold that's a little bit nicer, a little bit bigger, we make adjustments for that. It's not just that house sold, so that house is kind of like yours and it's the same. We make adjustments to condition. The size is a little different, the age is a little different. Any differences, good or bad, gets adjusted from the sales that we see. Okay, so the 4th step is we notify you of a proposed value, and the key word there is proposed. We're at step 4 of step 7, so there's still a whole lot more. So this is the beginning of the actual conversation. So when an inspector comes to your property, nobody knows at this point what the property value could be. It's not until we get to the very end when we have all the sales information, we've analyzed that, we've analyzed the information about your properties, we send a proposed value letter. At that point, and we're going to coordinate this with the city, of having different spots around the city for us to meet with you, and we can also do it by phone, so that if you have questions about it, We can explain the full process in more detail. We can talk about your property specifically and explain how we came to that. And if there's something that we missed about your property, something we got wrong, which can happen, we're all human, we all make mistakes, it's correctable and it's adjustable at this point. So we want to get this right. So this is what we do to be able to talk to you before it goes on the record and becomes official. Okay. So when we send the proposed letters, we will put the proposed values for every property in the city document up. We will put the sales that have come, that we've used, all the sales that have occurred in the city in that time as another document, so you can see the data that we've used. Like I said, we put up the neighborhood map. We put up a tax impact study, which if you're a numbers and graph nerd like I am, it gives you all the breakouts of the different property classes and all the relevant numbers if you're into that. So it breaks it all out if you really want the details. And that's all on the website for you to access so that you have the numbers if you want to see where we got our numbers as well. This is the meetings that I mentioned. We have the informal hearings that can be either in person or by phone, so that we try to accommodate that as much as possible. And we will be available until the last person is heard. We've expanded our hours as needed in some cities, some towns. We will make sure that we meet with everyone that wants to get met, have a meeting. Okay, so after this is kind of, I'm going to fill in a little bit of a gap between this and that. After we have our meeting, anyone we've met with, we will send them an additional letter. And it'll let you know that based on our meeting and any potential information you've given us, that we've either made an adjustment to your value, and we'll tell you what that is, or that we've not made an adjustment to the value. So when you get that letter, then you decide, all right, if they changed it, did they change it enough that I'm satisfied? Or did they not? And if you feel that the number is still not correct, you're able to do an appeal with the County Board of Taxation. So it takes it out of the city level, out of our hands, and it goes to the County Board of Taxation. And you file, generally, most counties, I think all counties are online, you can do it online, and it's a filing fee, and then once you're filed, they'll walk you through what you have to do. The key with this is a town that's doing a reval is what you guys are doing. And this, sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. This is for tax year 2027. So we're still a year away from being close to sending you guys letters, right? So in 2026 going into 2027, once you get the letter and you realize that you want to do an appeal, you have to file before May 1st, 2027. That is one of the true deadlines in this world. If you miss that, you've missed that and you have to wait a year. So that's really important that you know that. But we can work with you one-on-one. You don't have to have any kind of lawyer or representation. We actually try to do our best because it also costs us money to go to tax court. So if we can save you guys time, effort, and money, it also saves us time, effort, and money. It doesn't always result in that, and we do have to go to court, and that just is part of the process. We don't always come to an agreement. Yes, thank you. So commercial properties get assessed as well. They're looked at differently. They're looked at from a cost approach, where residential's looked at from a comparable sales approach. So your house, a house similar to yours sold for this, we determine that. For commercial properties, they look at what can that generate, and there's computations based on that. So the big thing is if you're here or you know people that have commercial properties, the Chapter 91s I think are going out next year right after tax season, because it's tax information that you need to provide. You need to let us know that there is basically your income and expense report. So what you're getting in, what you're spending your money, and if it's below industry averages, because if we don't have that information, we have to use industry averages. If you're below that, then it's to your advantage to get that to us, because then we will assess you based on your true numbers. Just like if we get an interior inspection on a residence, we're inspecting it based on the actual information and not suppositions on what could be there. So that's the important thing to get that in. Next, please. Okay, and this is what the Chapter 91 looks like. Go ahead, Jen. And so with the process, all properties are valued as of October 1st. So it'll be October 1st of 2026. right? That's the cutoff date for residential. All sales up to that point are looked at. Any sales that happen after that are not considered. That's just the line in the sand, and that's the same date for any town that is going through this process. October 1st, whatever year it is the cutoff date. Okay, a property is considered to be taxable when it's ready for use, for its intended use. So to put it in a residential context, if you're building a new house, is it done yet? Can you live in it? Well, if you can't, then it's not there. You will get taxed bare minimum on the land. If it's partially done, that you're using part of it, there could be a partial assessment on it. Similarly, if it's commercial property, if it's partially done and can be used, the land, and they'll do an income approach on the partial part of it. Thank you. And yeah, like I said, the information that we have currently on the website, and we're going to be updating this with some additional language information in the next couple weeks, is the introductory letter that we did mail to everyone, and the brochure, the presentation. This PowerPoint is available English, Spanish, and Portuguese currently. We're working on a few additional languages as we go forward. And the inspector ID sheet, so you can see, you should see, yeah, my sheet should be there. And for the residential properties, the assigned properties list, and that's a huge document because it's a huge city. And that's actually broken into two because it was getting so big that our website didn't let us attach a file that big. So it's in, you need your block and lot to get to the right property there. Okay, and that I believe is it, right? Yep, we're there. Okay, so Cerinthia,
Well, that was quick. So thank you all for paying attention. This is the time that we have the questions and answer session. I just want to make sure that we all remember to make sure there's one conversation at one time. We're listening and making sure that we can be aware of all the answers. I want to thank Mayor Baraka for. Hello. Okay. Sorry. Thank Mayor Baraka for being in attendance, as well as Councilwoman Roundtree and Council President Crump is here. This is the time that we open up questions. If you want to speak, you could come on this side to the mic so we can make sure. Do we have any questions? Anybody? You can come over to me. No questions? Everybody understand? You want to come over? I'm sorry, the mic won't reach all the way over there. Okay. It's up to you.
This is a couple of simple questions. One, will this PowerPoint presentation be available for other people who couldn't make it?
It's online right now.
Give us the mic, we can't hear.
Two, on my block.
all right, wait, so he was asking, is this online? Is this available? This PowerPoint is online in English, Spanish, and Portuguese currently.
I'm sorry, and it's also online, the city website, YouTube, as well as Newark People Assembly. It's been online for about 6 or 7 months now since we had our first virtual meeting.
And again, at the end, I'll give you our website and our phone number. So I'll do that at the end.
Two, on my block alone, folks coming in from New York and things have brought up about 3 houses that are similar to mine, but they've completely gutted them and renovated them. Is that going to be taken into account as they're doing that these properties in the last 2 or 3 years have been completely renovated inside?
Okay, what he's asking about is, and this is a common occurrence all throughout at least North Jersey, is where post-COVID, people from New York have come to New Jersey and bought houses and done substantial renovations. The short answer is yes, they affect the value because they've paid for this. But if the market goes up and you go up evenly with everybody, there's that equalization of the tax rate. So it's not as bad as it could be, right? Because it will increase your value because the property is more valuable. It's just people have been paying more for it. The thing directly, so just not knowing your property, but say the 3 of us represent the 3 people from New York and your house. We've made our properties much nicer because we put a lot of money in them. Our houses will be more valuable than yours because your house is as it was, right? So we're going to look at these houses, if they're next to yours, realize that this is what a really nice house sells for, and your house, if it's average typical for its age, is going to sell for down here. So they affect the overall value, the sales, but we take into consideration age of the house, condition, improvements, or lack of improvements, because there are houses that people just let go, and those affect that negatively.
Last,
Does that
yeah,
answer?
that answers-
Okay, perfect.
and last, I'm out of my house sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning and not back to 8, 9 o'clock at night. If you know you're not going to be there during the week, you schedule an appointment over, so like I know I can take a day off if I know you're coming on that day.
Right. So he was saying that he leaves really early for work, gets back really late. That's half of my life too, right? So I get that. The best way to do this is wait till you get that tag. He was asking about scheduling an appointment to be there. The best thing to do is wait till you get the tag that that person's in your area and they left a note on the door. Then call the office and say, I'd like to schedule a time, and we can coordinate with you to get a time that. And like I said, one inspector does nothing but improve all day long, and then the other inspectors in town have appointment times as well. So we try to be as flexible as possible. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I got one, just to piggyback, I don't need one, just to piggyback off of what the gentleman said. So, for example, you guys bought new houses, maybe, same house, same style, same framework, everything. You guys gutted yours, did it, beautiful. He didn't. Does that affect his property tax value? Will his taxes increase because yours is more nicer and it's in the same block?
So, right. No, I understand, and this gets complicated to answer, honestly, right? The simple way to answer that is the overall value will go up because these people have bought. People are coming in from New York. We all know they've overpaid. The values have gone up, but now it's the market, so that we have to value it to that market. So where your house might have been worth $200,000 before, it might be $400,000 now, right? But if that's the average increase, you're going to be okay. Is the short version of it, right? If we've done improvements, if we bought that same house that you have and we improved it, so instead of it now being a $400,000 house, we've made it into a $750,000 house, we're going to pay more taxes than you. What that final tax dollar is, that's to be determined. But if somebody has a bigger, nicer house, they're paying more. That's the short version. For our purposes, we put the value on the property. That becomes part of the calculation to figure out the taxes. So it's your value relative to everybody else's, and essentially you own a percentage of the town, right? And an easy way to think of that is that's your percentage of the budget that you have to pay, right? The more valuable your property, the more you're going to pay is the short answer. What that number is depends on the city's budget, the county's budget, and the school budget. And those you will not know until August of 2027 when they finalize all those budgets. So for our purposes, and when we have those informal meetings, the biggest question that's going to be on your head is, what are my taxes? At that point, we couldn't even guess. The mayor couldn't guess because the budgets aren't done. We can start having an idea of ballpark where you're going to land. Are you, like, has your value gone up above average? Well, your taxes would probably be higher. If you're at the average, you're probably going to have your normal year-to-year increase. If your increase is lower than the average increase, you could actually have a smaller, and I've seen where people have had a zero increase. But we're too early to determine that. Best thing is just go through the process. Best thing is to let us in so we could see the house to get the information accurate. If we get the information accurate, we're going to make our best effort to get a correct value on the property. And if we do that right, then it translates into you paying your fair share.
I have a question. What are you comparing it to right now? So in 2013, I had a revaluation of my home. And everything is the same except for paint and furniture. And it looks pretty. It looks nicer. But the rooms are the same. Maybe the bathroom, the floors might have been changed, painted. So it looks nice. So what are you comparing my house? I know you're talking about the market, but are you comparing that, when you're looking at the rooms, you said, oh, this room is beautiful, and this room is, you know, this bathroom is beautiful, this kitchen.
So she's asking, what are we comparing it to? So when we're looking at your house, when we're inspecting, we're just getting literally raw data. We're getting the square feet of your house, the land we get from the tax map that gets surveyed and approved, so we get how much land you have. Then we're taking measurements of the house to make sure that we get the square footage of your living space and anything else. And then when we come do the interior inspection, it is a room count. The biggest rooms that we're looking at are the kitchens and baths, because they have the biggest impact in resale. And we're looking like attics and basements. Are they finished? Because that's the one thing that you can change. Generally, most people, if you have a finished first floor, you're not going to unfinish it, right? So the data on your house could be exactly the same as it was in 2013. What's changed is the market. Your house is now worth more. I don't even know what house you have. I guarantee you it's worth more now than it was then. Right. So, right, but the thing that you want to look at is, did it raise proportionally to everyone else's? Is your increase in value proportional to, on average, the rest of the city? If it is, you're going to be at about the same level. I can't say exactly, but if the property, like the example I had, if your property value doubled from before, and that's the average for the city, if everybody doubles, you're going to be basically where you were before. Now, if your taxes are the same or not, that still is affected by what the city does. But our purpose is to get a current market value. So if we get a current market value correct for you and for everybody else, it's going to be higher than it was. We're what, 12, by the time we're done, we're going to be 14 years later, and we've had the COVID, growth of values in that time. So the key to look at is, when you see that number, first, does it make sense? Could I sell my house for this right now? That's your first, right? Then look at the data online. Look at the average increase for residential properties and say, all right, the average increase was 250%. Is my value from before to now at 250%? It's close. If it is close, then you're probably in the ballpark. If it's way off, call us and we'll have that discussion so that we can, if something got done wrong, we can correct it. Like I mentioned, we're at that point, we can look at it and have that conversation. And if we accidentally put you at, so that's where we're at. But your value is going to be higher. That I could, the market's up, so it's going to be. How high? It depends on what the sales are. We're still collecting the data. We have over a year's worth of sales before we get to that point of valuing. So a year from now, the market could be the same, it could be different. We have no way of knowing. Our numbers are driven by what the market does, and we don't control that. We just use that data to it's based on what's happening in the market.
You may not be able to answer this, but I'll ask this question. Are you looking at the neighborhood, not the houses, but the neighborhood?
We're looking, yes. So I mentioned we break the city into neighborhoods and beyond just the ward. So we're looking, like I said, your house is like, say, close to Route 21, you have the noise. If you're over here, you're not going to have the same influences as there. So we're going to look at the neighborhood influences. So if you're by a highway or a rail line, or if you're by something, if you're trying to think what adverse thing, airport, or, manufacturing or any kind of large commercial thing, there's noise. You have a convenience store that's open all night or a gas station with bright lights or whatever. We're looking at all of that because that all affects that. But that also gets affected by defining that neighborhood. So if we say that neighborhood is inclusive of that bright, gas station, any sales that occur in there are reflective of that being an influence on that sale. So yes, we are looking at it, but we're not always looking at it directly in connection to your property, but we're looking at it as part of that neighborhood. Okay, there was a gentleman at the back in the black shirt. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. My name is Jamira Solano. I'm just representing the Norfolk councilman. He couldn't be here today, so I just I had a few questions regarding the homes that have had illegal construction, and we know that they're not going to allow inspections to happen. So, and this is from a resident that called in regards to this. So they wanted to understand if the estimate's still going to be, based off of, that exterior when you go, because we have a lot of those issues.
Okay, let's answer one question at a time, because you said you had a couple, right? So the question was, if somebody has done extensive work on their house, permit, and they don't let us in, what happens? The standard that we have to go by from the state is if we don't get into see interior inspection, we have to estimate the property to the highest reasonable level. So if we don't get in and they have an attic, the attic is finished. If we don't get in and they have a basement, the basement is mostly finished. If we don't get in, kitchen modern, bathrooms modern, the interior condition is estimated and the estimate is marked at a higher than average rate. So the idea is it has to be reasonable. We can't say they have 32 bathrooms in a normal house, but from the reasonable number of bathrooms that they probably have, some of them are going to be modern, the interior condition. So it's going to elevate the value. Now, we may not hit to the value that they're at, but we're going to get close. And if it's something higher than they think it is, they're going to let us in so that we get it lower. So it's not a perfect system, but it does account for that so that they don't get away with it. Okay? And you had another question, or? Okay. And then this gentleman in the white.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier there was a comment about essentially kind of like qualifying quality of life issues in appraising a neighborhood. And I'm wondering what metrics you use to define that so that we understand what the basis of your appraisal for that is.
I'm not. Oh.
Like if there's a gas station nearby, that type of thing.
Like when you say quality of life, I'm trying to follow.
For example, you've alluded to Route 21 noise, or it could be a commercial zone of some sort.
Okay.
It could be a firehouse.
Gotcha. I just wanted some clarity, so I answered it directly. What we do, first part of it is within that neighborhood. So if we define a neighborhood, we're going to say, all right, sometimes I've seen neighborhoods like when we did Bayonne, it was just Avenue C was its own neighborhood, right? Because that was unique, right? So we look at things like that. I've seen in other towns where it's 20 houses are their own neighborhood because they're broken off from the rest of the town. They're looked at differently. So we're going to look at what effects within an area similarly affects. So if there's, say, Route 21 and a firehouse and this, and that kind of affects all of this area, that becomes a neighborhood. And then when we look at the valuing of the properties, we're going to look for sales that have occurred in that neighborhood. So just by the fact of what sells in that area with people that are looking to buy, there has to be an assumption that the buyer is an informed consumer, that they're doing their research to know that there's a firehouse. I'm close and I can hear Route 21 from here. The airport's flying over. All those things are factored into what people are willing to pay for a house in that area. So that factors in. Now, if it's something that becomes more specific to really like microcosm within a few houses, right, that wouldn't affect maybe a block over, you can email us. And again, at the very end, I'll give you guys the email and let us know that there's something specific about your property that we need to consider. And it could be, within a small area that this is affecting us adversely. And if it's something specific to your house that just wouldn't be obvious if we didn't know to look for it, you can let us know that too. And if you have documentation of pictures or repair bills or something that affects it, or any documentation that you could show that my house can't be looked at the same as everything else in this area because of this, you send that to us and we will consider that.
But may I ask one follow-up question then? Will this information in terms of the definitions of, let's say, quality of life, because I can't think of it.
Yeah, I follow you now, yeah.
Will those be online, and will those metrics be available for us to evaluate independently?
The tax map is online, not the tax map, the neighborhood map is online, but how we've come to that, there's not a descriptive of that. That is working with Frank in the assessor's office, our project managers, and senior staff to determine where there's influence similarly. And you can debate that with us and say, did you guys consider this? I feel, and say, like, I feel that this should be considered, whether it was or not, and then we'll look at that again at the end of the process.
And last question, I realize I'm taking up time. So therefore, if I understood you correctly, the information defining these neighborhoods, however small or large, will be available online. We will know their definition in terms of the real estate, so to speak.
Yeah, it'll be like a smaller version of the overall tax map and color coded. There was the one up there. It's hard to see that, but it will be online. And when we have public meetings, we will have hard copies there as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a question. So when you come into the house, you're not looking at how many, I have a two-family, but you're not looking that I have a two-family, but my basement is illegally rented. You're not checking for that.
We're marking the rooms we see. Actually, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Just kind of have a minute.
They're going to be looking at everything from top to the bottom of the house. If there's a kitchen and a bathroom in the basement, that's going to be another unit, most likely. We have to, and ASI, appraisal systems, has to look at exactly what's in the property.
Right. Okay. No, I'm just asking because most of the people in our area rent their basements illegally. So, you know, if you want to raise my taxes, they should be paying for a three-family house.
So, I think you're more asking if somebody else does that as well, what happens? Right. Right. So it goes back to if we don't get in, what do we do? So from the outside, does it look like a three-family house? And there are indicators. You generally can tell if it's more than a one or two family house. Not always. Not everybody's going to be visually able to see that. It's not a perfect system. They don't let us in. Sometimes people do get by. But the idea is that we're going to make note of that and adjust it based on what we see. We're looking doorbells, mailboxes, electric meters, gas meters, all that kind of stuff that indicates number of doors that look like different entrances. There's a lot of indicators that let us know that it's more than single family or two family or so on. And in any city, that's an ongoing concern.
The lady in the red shirt in the back. Hi, I have a question as far as our area. Like, I live on Orator Street, and so we have companies where their trucks come through our street every single day. Does that affect our quality? Because they're coming through there's no parking on our street. Our street is inundated with a lot of people, a lot of cars. They get tickets all the time. They're double parking. There's nowhere to park. And I understand that. The truck come through when the city comes through to get the trash. A lot of times they can't get through. They're blowing their horns because it's so many cars that are double parked. They're waiting for the people to come out. How does that affect our quality of life? Because we have a lot of companies that are down at, is it River Road? That like with the trucks coming through, down with across the street from the school, elementary school, down the street on Orator Street. There's companies there with all these trucks that are constantly coming through our street. And it disturbs our sleep because people are blowing their horn, they're blocked in, they can't get out. This is all the time, and it's been like that. And it's just like, what quality of life would we be getting in this situation when our taxes raised?
So again, focus for our purposes on the value of the property, because we can't directly affect your taxes. We're part of the equation, but there is a lot more to it. But to address her concern is her street that she's on, and that she gets a ton of double parking, right? Double parking, trucks going by, trucks not able to get by, blowing their horns, creating just noise and congestion is the short version of what you said, right? If that's often that's not anything we're going to be aware of. We may note that, but the best thing to do is document it. Send us an email, take a couple pictures. and maybe a short video to show, send that in so you could say, this is what I see at, this woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is what I'm dealing with. So we know, because in like other circumstances, like if somebody has a lot of flooding when it rains heavy, if we're not there when it's raining, we're not going to be able to see it. So document it at its worst and show us so that we can see what you're seeing. And that's the best way to do it. And when I tell you to send in like pictures and videos, I used to say send in whatever. Send in a reasonable amount of the worst. Because I told somebody to send in, and one project manager said, yeah, somebody sent in 225 pictures. Send in the worst. Make your best impact and convey. You can make a statement there, right? In the email, a couple paragraphs of, I follow. Yeah. The best thing is to show us, because we're not going to see it at its worst, and if you can show us at its worst. Yeah, please.
The questions, I just want to turn it to a different perspective. Every time we have a revaluation discussion about reval, everybody is afraid about their taxes, and I get that. I understand where that's coming from. But revaluation doesn't necessarily mean that for you, right? What it means is the value of your property. The value of your property going up is actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing that the value of your property going up. It means you have more equity in your home. It means you can sell it more, you can borrow off of it. These are things that you can do. It means that when you pass it down to your children or your grandchildren, that it's worth more, right? And they can do more with it. That's why people want the value of their home to go up. That's important. You don't want the value of your home to go down where your property is underwater, where you're paying more for a property than it's actually worth, right? Which is what was happening for a very long time in the city. That changing around allows people's values to go up, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself are going to pay more taxes. The people on your block that own those factories, they have to pay taxes too. So when revaluation is done, it's not just done on residential property. It's also done on industrial and commercial property as well. It's designed to make sure that every part of the city is paying their fair share. So if you take all of the area down in the Ironbound close to the port, the value of that land has went up tremendously, right? People are purchasing that property for a lot more industrial property, which means in my mind, they should be getting a heavier hit than everybody else. And so what it does is it evens our values out. So when it's time to pay, that we pay our fair share. Everybody's paying their fair share. That's what it's designed to do. And if somebody on your block, you got some illegal stuff going on, hopefully they're reported. But if not, hopefully they can catch, and the value of their property will go up. But they're also going to pay more of a share of their taxes if the tax rate goes up. The tax rate is designed by the city, the county, and the school. So if the school raised taxes, the county raised taxes, the city raised taxes, then that's your tax rate. That's what you have to pay. You're paying for schools, you're paying for county government, and you're paying for city government. Those are the three things. Your reevaluation, what you pay, is based on these three entities. And if we don't raise your taxes at all, revaluation doesn't affect your taxes at all, right? Then you just got a home that went up and your taxes didn't go up. What you're paying for are the services that the county provides, the schools provides, and the city provide collectively. Right? Most of us don't know what those are, but we should figure that out. But ultimately, that's the difference between reval and taxes. Every time we have this discussion, everybody is concerned about their taxes, and you should be. You should be, because you got to pay. I'm concerned about my taxes. I live here, I got to pay too, right? But at the end of the day, I know my property value went up because I bought a home that was abandoned many, many years ago. We didn't have revaluation. We already had revaluation, and now we're going around to do it again every 10 years or so. So it's time for them to come to my house and figure out what it is that I renovated, and the value of my property is going to go up. I hope it goes up. I don't want my taxes to go up, but I hope my property value goes up because I got kids, and I want them to inherit value and not inherit a house that's going to put them in debt.
I appreciate all that information. However, my homeowner's insurance went up 3 times as much, but my property value went up. And when I got that bill, I almost cried.
Right. Yep. That's a
And I
whole
couldn't,
different animal.
yes.
Yeah.
When I called my insurance, I was angry. And they explained to me things that I never knew before. Is your property go up in value? We're gonna have to raise the insurance because we're gonna have to cover more. So no longer your house, when your house was, when you bought insurance, your property was 450, now it's 750.
That's the state,
So
they
you
gotta intervene in that
Yeah, that's
and
bad.
change that stuff. The
So,
state has to intervene and change this and regulate these people. That's what's gotta happen. To me, it's just deregulation and they're doing what they wanna do. That's simply what it is. I mean, this is not the discussion for these guys to be here with me,
no,
saying
but
it's my opinion.
but it was
I'm
for
not
you
putting it on
because
these
you brought
guys.
up the conversation.
Yeah,
Because
that's
like
me.
I said, I appreciate the information,
Yeah.
thank you very much, but that was a hit that I was not expecting.
Right, and I think that our legislatures need to engage these companies and the governor's office to engage these companies because what they're doing, in my estimation, is, arbitrary, and we have to regulate them. That's my opinion, right? Simply, I can't, the city can't make them do anything because the city laws don't regulate that type of entity. We need a higher law to be able to do that, to regulate them. What you're going through is terrible, and it's probably happening to many people around the city.
Yes. And that's how people lose their houses.
I agree.
I got a basic question. You have already, you've established that the prices are going to go up. We're gonna pay higher taxes. That's been established. However, do we get additional resources with the higher taxes?
Well, they don't, that's not good.
Check my blood.
All they doing is telling you what your property is worth. That's it. That's all they do. That's why people ask. That's why I come to these meetings. That's why I come. Yeah.
All right.
That's why I come to these meetings so they don't get beat up about the taxes. They don't have
gonna
anything to
beat
do
them
with
up.
that. They don't have anything to do with the taxes. They just tell you what your property is worth. Simple. That's
Okay.
all they do. What
And
your
no
tax rate
resource.
is has to do with three entities: the school system, the city of Newark, and the county of Essex. That's it. Those are the three people that are raising your taxes. The three of us are the culprits there. And having a discussion about what that looks like is a discussion for me and the directors when we have our other meetings, not really for these guys. I come here to get them off the hook and steer you in another direction. But that's really what it is, right? If you feel like your service is not happening, then you do need to say something about that at those meetings. So
We
you get
need
the
more
services that you pay for. Absolutely.
Like Public Works.
Right, well, I agree. That's a whole other
Department of
discussion.
Public Works.
We just changed the director.
Yep.
Yeah, I do, for the appraiser firm, actually, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but this is going a different direction. In your comments, you did not address exterior additions to the property, for example, garage. So can you talk about that and how it impacts the appraisal?
Yes, so everything on your property has some value. So when we look at valuing properties, there's two parts. You have the land, and what's referred to in industry is the improvements. The improvements mean anything on the land. So the house, a garage, a shed, if you had, an in-ground pool and a pool house and tennis courts and a basketball court and all that, anything that you have on your property has some value. Not mine either, but anything you have on your property has value. So if from the last time there was an assessment and if you went through the process, you got permits, that gets added to it. If you didn't get permits and we come around and we say, hey, that's not on there, we add it on there. That's, if we visually can see it, even over a fence line, we estimate it if we can't actually get on and measure it. And we make notes that, can see an addition, measure it. Same kind of thing if somebody had a garage in the back and they converted that to an apartment and we could determine that it's not a garage and it looks like living space. We treat it as such. If they eventually let us in and prove that it's still like not a garage but maybe a really big shed, we can adjust it back. But we look to see what potentially the highest possible use of that is based on what we can see. If we don't get in, we use the exterior evidence to get it to the highest reasonable level. If it looks like that, that's what we're going to call it, and that's how we're going to value it. But I think I answered a little bit more, but I think it's in the gist. But if you have just a garage, that has value. If you have other things, you have a patio, it has some value, porches, you know, all anything you have. And just think, if you were to sell your house, everything you would put in the listing. We have an outdoor sitting area. It has some value. You're putting it on there because you think you can extract more from a buyer by having an outdoor living area. It's not a lot more, but it is more. Okay?
Thank you. You're welcome.
Does the garage has to have something to indicate that it's not being used as a shed, like this type of a bathroom? Do you consider it as a living space?
Okay, so the question was garage, what's the tipping point for it to be a living space as opposed to just storing a car? Okay, so if it still is garage doors and not sealed off like a house, most likely. You in a garage you could have a bathroom, you could have a sink, but if it shows purpose to be used as a living space, it then becomes a living space.
The gentleman in the back.
Just to the mayor's point, raising property values adds all the equity and everything to your home, but to this gentleman and young lady in front of their points, that quality of life issue works on both sides. So if you just happen to live near Branchbrook Park and the Cherry Blossoms and the Robert Treat Academy and the Northwood Center and the Ballantyne Parkway, if you happen to live in those areas where people are buying these houses, gutting them and renovating, that is going to have an effect on the value of your house. Is that correct?
Right, so for those properties, let's just say that are in view of the cherry blossoms, right? We consider view as one of the things. So both ways. So if the back of your house backs up to a scrapyard, we're making note of that. If your house looks out onto the park and has a beautiful view, we note that. That affects value. So those people's houses, just purely based on the view, get an elevated value. So, and that gets factored into the neighborhoods. That the houses that would have that immediate view around the park might be one house deep, that it's its own neighborhood around the park and in different sections depending on where it is. That's how specific it can get with the neighborhood breakouts, because you might have one part that sees the park but backs up to maybe not a great area, another section that sees the park and has a good neighborhood behind it. So all those things are looked at. So it's not just one thing. They have a great view, great, but what if the neighborhood isn't doing as well otherwise?
I'm not, again, suggesting that any of that is bad. I'm just, when we're talking about quality of life, and everybody needs to understand, that's going to hit on both ends. This like may lower some people's value or keep it even. It's going to change the value on some people on the other end. So all of that needs to be understood as this is occurring.
If you're in an area that has an enhanced view, put it simply, your value is higher. People are generally willing to pay more for that. The sales will reflect that. And that's why we would define the neighborhood by that, where you can have that positive. Or if you're like down, like in the Ironbound, very close to the industrial area, it's not as nice in certain areas. They're going to have a lower, but people aren't going to pay the same for a residential property there. Maybe. We're going to look at the sales. You know, the assumption would be one, but we don't make assumptions. We look at the sales within the neighborhood. It may be that, you know what, people are willing to invest there to develop that, and they're buying it up because they want to create that neighborhood and build it up and make money and create that value by rejuvenating that area. So, you know, assumptions you make about certain areas, you don't know until you look at the sales. And that really is the thing that drives our valuing.
Yeah. One thing you want to do is to make sure you talk to your friends and neighbors and express to them about how important it is to have the city is paying, you are paying a lot of money for this revaluation. And if you don't don't have the ASI guys get into your property, they're going to be estimating, and it's going to be a lot more than what it would be most likely if they got in, because we're going to have to estimate the basements and attics and that type of thing. So please urge people to let you, to let ASI in and do an inspection on the property.
I didn't think I did on this one. Okay, so I promised you guys the email, or so our website is asinj.com. It's at the bottom of the screen there. If you have information that you want to send about your property, yeah, asinj.com. That's the website. If you want to send information to us directly about your property or something we need to know about your area, it is norc@asinj.com. Put your block and your lot in the subject line, and that way we can connect that information specifically to your property. And if you want to call our office, it's 201-493-8530. 201, sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head because I have it in my cell phone. 201-493-8530. And you can see that on our website too if you lose it.
Quick question. You said we won't know till the end of 2027?
Yes.
It's for tax year 2027. We'll be mailing the value letters at the end of 2026 or very beginning of 2027. It just, that we can't mail them out until I think it's mid-November is the earliest we could mail them out of that year. And then we'll mail them out. We say all at the same time. There's so many, it'll be, we'll do a couple thousand a day over a couple weeks. So it'll be at the same, they'll all be valued at the same time. But the mailing's just because that's a lot to send out. And we want to stagger it a little because people will start calling our office. So we want to be sure that we don't send out, there's 46,500 line items in Newark, something like that. So we want to stagger it so people can get through and talk to somebody at our office.
And it also depends, you said, on the city budget of 2027, right?
When the city passes that budget for 2027, these new values will take effect at that same time. So at that August, depending on, I haven't looked at the calendar, whenever they pass it that year in August, end of July, beginning of August.
So based on the city budget, it's pretty much how the taxes are going to get raised.
Yeah. What this does is this makes sure you're paying your fair share based on your value relative to everyone else's value. And then how much you pay depends beyond that on what they pass for a budget.
If you misplace that little piece of paper that left at your home, if I just call, they can tell me who my inspector is?
Yeah, the number I just gave, you can call that. That's the same number. It's on the website as well. Yeah. We good?
So thank you. If there's no further questions, we appreciate you. Please visit the table over there. We do have some flyers. And just a reminder, August 7th is the North Ward. Join your conversation with the Mayor Baraka and leadership team. Please come out. I know you guys have a lot of questions and concerns. That's your opportunity to make your voice heard with all the department directors. Thank you. Oh, Stephanie, the mayor's aide. Thank you from the North Ward.